It's Brittany, bitch.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is
Morning Somewhere!
for October 8th, 2024. My name is Burnie Burns, sitting right over there. She's Category 5 in my heart, everybody. It's Ashley. Say hi to Ashley, everybody.
Only because I can't get to Cat 7.
Yeah, I was
doesn't exist.
reading about Milton coming from the Gulf of Mexico, heading towards the Gulf Coast of Florida. I think Tampa Bay is the biggest city that's in the path right now. Did you hear some of the sirens, the evacuation sirens that they're playing?
I haven't heard the evacuation sirens, but I know that this Hurricane Milton that's incoming at the moment is almost an anomaly. It's one of the strongest hurricanes that's ever been seen. So I hope people take the evacuation very, very seriously.
Currently rated fourth strongest hurricane of all time. It was like 5 when I went to bed last night, and now it's number 4.
Well, that's not going to get a bronze medal.
Could be number 3, number 2, fairly soon, or could drop off. You never know with these things.
Yes, one of the scary things about this one, and I think why they're taking this very seriously, is that it is grown to Category 5 very, very quickly. And even within Hurricane 5, because Category 5 is the highest category of hurricanes, it's still kind of an anomaly there. So a hurricane is Category 5 if it drops below 919 MB. That's its barometric pressure. If it has winds over 155 miles per hour and a storm surge over 18 feet, it's considered a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane.
Do you have what classifies for a Category 4 there?
Yes, I do. A Category 4 is between 920 and 944 MB with winds 131 to 155 miles per hour and a storm surge of 13 to 18 feet.
I read a commenter analysis of this, and they said that if the category increments continued beyond Category 5, that at its current barometric pressure reading and at 180 mile per hour winds is what it's being measured at now, that it would be a Category 7 if such a category existed. But they just cap them out at Category 5.
Right. I guess I always assumed they were kind of like hurricanes like earthquakes, where it just kept going up, but it was harder and harder to get to the higher categories because they had to double in intensity in order to step up a notch. But I guess Category 5 is the max.
I guess they want to keep it simple as possible. I think tornadoes are the same way. I think the highest classification of a tornado is an F5. There was a F5 tornado that hit Gerald, Texas, like this gigantic, it looked like the finger of God coming down on this little town and just wiped it off the map. That was about 25 years ago.
What does Glenn Powell say? What does he have to say about the strength of twisters?
I have no idea. This is like, it's so interesting to me that like we talk about these things all the time, but you just never know. Within like a week, you could have this warning of like, yeah, there's a hurricane that's out there starting up. It's a tropical depression. And then within like 5 days, you're like, we need to leave our house and get out of here, along with everyone else in our city.
And the thing is, sometimes you just don't know. I was wondering, because we've just had Hurricane Helene devastate the Carolinas and that whole area in the U.S.
Yeah,
and
southeast.
I thought, how Milton? It skipped a couple letters.
Yeah, from Helene to Milton.
So I went and looked it up. It turns out that we've missed Isaac, Joyce, Kirk, and Leslie. And those are all storms that have developed since Hurricane Helene.
When do they name them? I think they name them when they're at the tropical depression level, right?
I think so. And then they can sometimes develop into hurricanes, sometimes not.
And I'm assuming here that depression, the name comes from the barometric pressure reading, because the lower it is, the more dangerous the storm is.
That makes sense to me. So it looks like, Isaac ended up as a Category 2 hurricane. Joyce ended up as a tropical storm. Kirk ended up Category 4, and Leslie ended up Category 1.
So it goes tropical depression, tropical storm, Category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It makes sense.
And then it caps out. There's currently right now 3 hurricanes, 2 hurricanes and 1 typhoon currently making their way through oceans right now.
It's a busy ocean.
Yeah.
Busy ocean.
Yeah. And it's, this one is different for a lot of people because typically in the U.S., the hurricanes start out in the Atlantic, like somewhere in the Caribbean, or as they say here in Scotland, the Caribbean. It'll start out there and then head westward into somewhere. It's always like this, like you're watching it, like, is it going to go past Florida and head into like New Orleans, or is it going to go up the East Coast? This one's weird because it started like in the Gulf of Mexico and is working its way east towards the western coast of Florida, which is not unheard of. It's not unique,
but it's unusual.
It's very unusual. It's very unusual. The problem with that to me is that you get both sides. Sometimes with the climate change thing, you just get people weighing in when they shouldn't. Like they'll see this and say a hurricane that started in the Gulf of Mexico, and people are going to say climate change doesn't exist. It's like, it's not the individual event that illustrates climate change. It's the overall trend. That to me is the same version on the other end of the spectrum when there's a really harsh winter storm and someone goes, so much for global warming. It's like, to me, it's like the exact same thing. You just don't understand what's going on, and you just heard a buzzword or something like that, and you want to throw it out there every chance you get.
Right. It's the trend. It's like what's that test when you're in media if women talk to each other about something that's not a man?
The Bechdel test.
The Bechdel test. Thank you very much. Where that's like passing the Bechdel test in and of its in itself is like, okay, fine, whatever. But it's just when you look at the trend of how many pieces of media actually pass the Bechdel test, and you go, oh, that doesn't seem like that many.
No,
it's the trend, right? Like trend. Just one doesn't in itself like damn a thing.
I think the Bechdel test, the qualifications for it are that it has to be two women on screen and they have a conversation that doesn't involve a man.
I think it's also the women have to have names.
And the women have to have names, yes.
So something like that. So that
be named characters.
Yes, two named female characters who must talk to each other about something not a man. That's the three requirements for the Bechdel test.
And then when you see a movie and you're like, well, that didn't pass the Bechdel test. It's like, well, it's just because the characters are
It's a romantic comedy.
Like James Bond got captured or something like that. So it makes sense within the movie. But then like Ashley's saying, you see the overall trend of how few movies can go an entire movie and not have two women talk on screen and not talk about a man and have names. Then it gets wild when you look at the overall trend.
Yeah.
And that's where we're living right now with climate change. You know, while we're talking about theories that have names, are you familiar with the Fermi Paradox?
What's that?
It's in astrophysics. It's the paradox that basically, it's the best way to explain this, because there's essentially an infinite amount of stars and an infinite amount of planets, that means the probability of there being extraterrestrial life is basically a certainty. Like it would be so certain that there would be life somewhere else in the universe. Also, because of the age of our star, there should be a lot of civilizations who are more advanced than we are at this point in time, and yet we have found zero. And why is that the case? Why are there no other civilizations that we have discovered in this infinite possibility?
Well, universe is a big place. If it's infinitely sized with infinite stars, we're not going to see infinite of them. We're going to see a limited number. And there's no reason just because you don't see something here doesn't mean it doesn't exist elsewhere.
But
right?
there's been they didn't say specifically the Fermi Paradox, but there was an experiment that was done by some astrophysicists where they simulated alien civilizations, and their conclusion they reached was that alien civilizations are probably killing themselves from climate change. And that what they basically said is that once civilization reaches the point where they start to produce their own energy, they're not just getting energy from their ecosystem or from their solar system. I should say their star system, not their solar system, but from their local star, that once they begin to produce their own energy, they have about 1,000 years from that point before the energy production tips their ecosystem into climate change and makes life unsustainable on their home planet.
Well, does that assume, though, that they're basically like humans in the way that they generate and consume energy, use energy, and then say that climate change doesn't exist?
I think they were just saying, like, they were just running a civilization test. I mean, it's like simulations on everything. What to me is interesting about it is that the Fermi Paradox is kind of like this huge red flag of, like, where the hell is everyone else? Like, what the hell happened?
I mean, I've never really wondered that because the universe is a very big place. It's very, very difficult to go very long distances. I mean, look, we're having trouble getting to Mars, right, which is the planet right next door, because livers can't take it, right? Our liver just can't do it.
I think it was kidneys.
Was it kidney?
Yeah.
That's right. That was the kidney. So everything else is great, and then our kidneys step in and go, whoa, Bob, what do you think you're doing?
But in that same sense, they were saying
and that's just next door.
If you even look at the Fermi Paradox, they're saying like even if you had interstellar travel, it would take maybe a few million years to traverse the entire Milky Way, which sounds like an incredible amount of time until you realize that there are stars that have habitable planets that are billions of years older than our star. So that time frame does exist. And it's not only the evidence of someone who's alive today, an alien civilization, but the evidence of a former alien civilization, like a superstructure or something like that.
Right, but if it's far enough away, no telescope that we have or conceivably will have in the next 100 years will be able to find it. What we need to find, Burnie, is the Mass Effect relays.
Then we can just jump from point to point. I'm trying to get right now. Mission status on Voyager 1 was launched 5th of September, 1977. It is currently 15 billion miles away from Earth.
Okay, but in context of the solar system, where is it at?
What's that?
Is it out? Has it passed the solar system?
Yeah, it's out of our solar system now.
Is it looking for Planet X?
It might have a shot of finding Planet X if it gets beyond it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Because looking outward, it's harder to see it, but maybe looking backwards towards it where there's celestial bodies that can be blocked by Planet X, then perhaps they could find evidence of it. And people go, told you so.
And there'll be a superstructure right there.
There it is. It could just be coming back, and then we'll have Planet X making its way back in. It'll be an alien craft. And the people on the moon observing Earth will go, we told you this was going to happen.
And the astrophysicists will go, fun fact, they died out 1,000 years ago.
But there is something, right? To me, there's something about that. Why haven't we run into anything? Why haven't we run into the evidence of it? Why not explore it and see, like, is there a certain point, is there a certain level of technology that just dooms civilization? And could it be something as simple as the
memes
production, the production of your own energy? Once every civilization invents TikTok, how long do they have? That's what I want to know.
I think we're at the tipping point with AI, right? Like you've got Microsoft dusting off nuclear generators to power AI.
Well, like for instance, I mean, we look at just, when we split the atom, as the former highest grossing R-rated film of all time, Oppenheimer, showed us, how long before that technology gets into the hands of someone sitting in their garage, right? And then if that's the case with something that's as devastating as nuclear fission, what happens when you get something even more devastating, right? And how do you then control that and keep that under wraps? How do you do it? Or maybe it's something as simple as like this experiment, and we'll link it in the link dump so you can read all about it. It's something as simple as we just start producing our own energy, and that just immediately starts a clock on
Right.
us.
It's like if you 3D print your own Hadron Collider or start cooking gasoline in your kitchen.
What if we found out that... How dare you? Once you get the internet, you can download the Anarchist Cookbook when you're 13 years old. I mean, what if we find out that like black holes are like a marker for former civilizations that you're like, hey, we've got nuclear fusion all figured out. And it's like they turn it on and then boop, nope, they're a black hole.
Yeah, then someone goes, wait, the barometric pressure is really dropping.
Yeah.
And then the planet goes boop and doesn't exist anymore.
Goes boop. We're a category 0 planet now. Well, since you were talking about AI, there was this really disturbing thing that I read on Reddit. Oh, before we get off the climate change thing, though, real quick, I'm going to interrupt myself here. I am going to post a link to a blog on Substack that I found, which is Climate Hopium, which I think is great. If you're familiar with the concept of hopium?
Is that like copium, except it's actually like good news?
Yeah, you're just like trying to find good news wherever you can find it, essentially. I love in sports, they call it sunshine pumping, which is pumping sunshine up your ass when your team's doing poorly. Dodgers lost, by the way, to the Padres, like 10-2. They're now tied 1-1. Can't believe we ended up playing the Padres again. So I'll link this because this is it's a Substack that's dedicated exclusively to good climate news, which I love. Like, one of the things that's been crazy lately is just how much solar panels and solar energy capture has wildly blown away all the projections we had for it. Like, we are turning into a solar planet, which is a dumb thing to say because that's what we were for billions and billions of years. But now it's like all of our energy is like, you can just watch it, like moving towards solar, which I love it. I love it. Because once you get solar, you've solved the energy problem. You know, the only thing that can stop that is if the sun goes out, and then you got a bigger problem on your hands. Right.
Although for about 8 minutes, you might be very confused.
It is weird to have a technology that's out there. It's like, if we do this, we're done. We're done. It's over. Like, we never have to talk about it ever again if we can get this right.
Right. Well, then everyone moves on and finds the next problem, right? The next problem is storage. Like solar capture is in a good place. Now we're going to need solar storage.
That's getting better as well along with it, you know.
Great news. We figured out storage. We've increased our consumption dramatically. Now we need another solution.
Now we only have 500 years before Earth planet shuts down. But when you're talking about AI, I was looking at this. There was this post put on Reddit where they just did a simple lookup. This is from the Singularity subreddit, which is funny because singularity is a weird term because it can mean like a black hole or it can mean just a major technological event.
Well, I always thought that in AI terms, the singularity is... That's when AI becomes self-aware, right?
Well, that's the AI version of the singularity, right?
Yes.
It's like a watershed moment where civilization as a whole changes.
Right.
Because of this one technology. Singularity in crypto is like whoever's saying to buy it gets rich, basically. That's singularity for that.
Is there a singularity coin yet?
But there probably is. So in this singularity subreddit, somebody just looked up the phrase on Google image search, baby peacock. And we'll post a link to this Reddit post. And they just went through, and I'm just going to do a really rough count here. Out of about 20 images, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 images are AI generated.
Wow. That's not
for baby peacock.
That's unfortunately not that surprising. I do a lot of searching when we post a podcast looking for relevant thumbnails, that kind of thing. And even stock image sites are throwing out tons of AI generated results now.
And let's call it what it is. 14 of the images are AI generated images that we can identify as being AI generated. Like there could be one that sneaks in here that we don't know is AI generated. One of the weirdest things about this subreddit is people will often post a photo and saying, I can't believe my boomer grandparents or my boomer parents think this is a real image. And then they post the image and half the people in the comments go, is that not a real image? That looks like a real thing to me. It's like, no, look at the way the ear folds there. It's like, is this what we have to do now?
Don't know. Not a peacock expert.
Or am I going to be like out there like looking with a magnifying glass at every single aspect of every image to make sure it's not AI generated?
Burnie, count the feathers.
What are we going to do, Ash? What are we going to do with this internet? Like it was so important for so long, and it's just like I feel like it's just either going to become completely irrelevant or it'll just go away.
I think we need to build a new internet with blackjack and hookers.
You don't have a solution off the top of your head of what we're going to do to stave this off?
In order to join the new internet, you have to be able to pass the CAPTCHA.
I think what we're doing here is, I think, on the path to where a lot of people might be headed, where you just have a small community of people you know that are like, it's a small enough gravity well where like AI or bots or people who make bots aren't interested in it. Does that make sense?
Right. You got to stay off the radar.
Right. As opposed to something when we've been involved with things like this before where they get that big gravity well and people just show up because they're not interested in the thing. They're just interested in all the things around the thing, you know, or just the eyeballs or something like that. Like we even had that subreddit for Rooster Teeth. It wasn't a Rooster Teeth subreddit. It was an Achievement Hunter Minecraft subreddit that also liked anime and everything else. It was like, there's all these other subreddits, but people had to go post in the main one because it was the biggest one.
Right. So they would post there's an Achievement Hunter subreddit, but people are posting their Achievement Hunter stuff in the Rooster Teeth subreddit.
Right. And it didn't make any sense why that was the case. And once things got to the point of like a Ruby and got that big, nobody posted about Ruby stuff in Rooster Teeth because the Ruby subreddit was just as big as the Rooster Teeth subreddit. Right.
Right.
And it's and the same thing I think applies to then that behavior for people who create these bots and LLMs and things like that. They just tend to go wherever they can get the most eyeballs and the most attention or the most interaction.
Right. They're going for the low-hanging fruit wherever possible.
Right. Right. And you can say, this is a more appropriate place to post that. They're like, hey, no, I'm going to post it here because it's like 250,000 people versus like 30,000 or something like that. But I do think the smaller groups and the smaller forums are going to be a thing that people gravitate towards in the future. I
always like those, though. I like them for a lot of reasons, not only because maybe, we're too small to attract the attention of the bot army, but because It feels like a tighter knit community. People get along. People recognize each other. It's great.
All right. Well, what else is going on, Ashley? If you're in Tampa Bay, I hope you're in your car listening to this podcast on your way out.
Stay safe. Get out of town if at all possible. And I would like to thank sponsors for today. Very happy birthday to Jane Belotis from Steve Markham, Frankie Mumu, Clyde, and Iris. They are the first shout out that we now have for sale on our Patreon. So if you want a shout out for a special occasion, check that out. And also thank you to House for sponsoring this podcast at patreon.com/morningsomewhere.
Yes. Thank you, House. We appreciate you. All right. Well, that does it for us today. October 8th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.